am a maker.
I am a bridge builder.
I am persistent.
I am eager to help.
I'm a risk taker.
I am inspired by the possibilities of entrepreneurship.
I am a leader.
I am a thinker. I am a doer.
I am a perfectionist.
I am an entrepreneur because if I don't make it, no one else will.
We are actually able to develop processes that can be more efficient.
My name is Cynthia Franklin. I'm Director of Entrepreneurship here at Stern. The Entrepreneurs Challenge is one of the largest and most intense venture competitions of its type in the country, and it spans over 8 months. The challenge literally walks teams step by step through the startup process, from idea to launch.
The Entrepreneurs Challenge molds the entrepreneurs in 2 ways. First, it subjects them to rigorous analysis about their business. And second, it exposes them to tremendous mentors and leaders in the entrepreneurial community. And both of those factors help make their businesses 10 times better.
Its primary aim is to support and provide guidance to all the students, alumni, faculty, and researchers who really want to create something new in the world of business. The secondary aim is to identify and reward those ventures being developed inside of the university and inside of the NYU community with the greatest potential to not only become viable businesses, but more importantly, become disruptive ones.
Entrepreneurship is like strategy and theory in action. It brings together everything that you learn about business into a focused attempt to solve a problem and sparks creative ways of thinking about that problem.
No matter how many ideas I think I've heard of, when I come to the Entrepreneurs Challenge, I'm just blown away by the creativity, the inspiration, the new ideas that this generation of entrepreneurs has to offer.
We're working on an in-bed resistance training product for the elderly.
A loyalty program for plant-based eating.
Building a more efficient, powerful, and lightweight electric motor for electric vehicles.
What I loved about the process was there were many people at NYU that pointed out gaps in our plan, right? So they said, you don't have this or you missed this. And so that iterative process of learning from your peers, from venture capitalists, from judges, from professors, really helped us make the plan sort of bulletproof when we did present it in the final round.
Oh, it's been incredibly helpful. It's been very useful to have a structured process. We've had a lot of coaching, we've had the boot camps.
It's forced us to progress a lot faster than we may have. Otherwise, it's held us accountable to deadlines. It's exposed us to a lot of really interesting people and mentors.
I would say the one-to-one support that we get from the people here at Stern, I wouldn't think that you would be able to do that with as many teams, but it's been unbelievable for us.
I think this competition challenges you in ways that you weren't expecting, and this actually comes up a lot in startup life. And so the piece of advice I'd give to everybody out there is to just keep going, just have persistence, because if you keep making a little bit of progress every day, it actually adds up.
It's important for universities to cultivate entrepreneurial talent because these are the people that are creating a new future for us.
We try to bring people together to let them know they can succeed, they can do it, they can take the ideas, they can get a mentor, they can get an opportunity to look out at the world, and in a little bit of a formal sense, they can look around and say, gee, this is a place where I can do things. Give them the opportunity to look inside themselves and try and figure out how can they convert that to a business idea.
The Entrepreneurs Challenge is not an academic exercise. We do not give awards for the best plans, and this is not a pitch competition.
Teams participating in the Entrepreneurs Challenge are really getting a 2-for-1 sort of deal. The challenge is both an accelerator program and a competition. It's an accelerator program because we provide boot camps, workshops, and tons of one-on-one coaching. But the second component, the competition, is the icing on the cake, if you will. While the teams are learning how to refine their venture concepts and business models, they can also compete for the chance to win cash prizes and pro bono services.
The teams that typically win the Entrepreneurs Challenge take full advantage of all the resources at their disposal. They leverage the thriving New York City ecosystem NYU sits at the center of. The prize money is not a way of saying congratulations for a job well done. The prize money is to fund all the work that's yet to come to bring the concept to fruition.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the kickoff of the 19th Annual Entrepreneurs Challenge. We're so glad you joined us. I'm Cynthia Franklin, Director of the Berkeley Center for Entrepreneurship. And on behalf of our entire team, we're so happy that you're considering applying to the Entrepreneurs Challenge. This next hour and a half or so is basically going to consist of three major parts. The first will be me walking through on a very high level some particular details regarding the challenge. The second part will be a panel discussion with two wonderful founders who have gone through the program. And then the third will be taking your questions at the end of the program. So let's just dive right in. For those of you who don't know, the Berkeley Center for Entrepreneurship is housed at Stern. And what we do is we essentially nurture entrepreneurs at NYU, and I mean all our global campuses, all of our schools. So although we're housed at the business school, we actually serve the entire campus. We actually enjoy sitting at the center of a thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem at Stern and at NYU more broadly. And, just a fun fact we thought we'd throw in there, it actually deals done by NYU founders over the last 5 years have totaled $20 billion, and that's not including the sprinkler deal that was just closed a couple of days ago. NYU consistently ranks within the top 10 business schools in terms of fundraising. Yay. So we're very proud about that. And a big part of that is just this incredible ecosystem that's at the university. The Berkeley Center is happy to be a part of that. And our flagship program, which does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of nurturing entrepreneurs, is the Entrepreneurs Challenge. Next slide, please. The Entrepreneurs Challenge actually consists of two competitions. One is the new venture competition, and the other is the social venture competition. And I'll get right to those in a minute. As I mentioned before, we've been doing this for, well, not me personally, but we've been doing this for about 19 years. And over the years, we have produced some very notable alumni. You may or may not know that the germ for Pinterest actually started at NYU. They pitched as one company called Tote. An NYU MBA was on that team. They pivoted several times, and they eventually became Pinterest. Another company that's notable is Maracas, which is now Beyond Good. They make delicious chocolate that you'll find all over. And what was interesting about Maracas is that they came through our social venture competition. And what they did was find a way of developing chocolate, being the first bean to bar chocolate company that was based on the African continent in Madagascar. And as a social venture, they were able to create a business model that allowed them to produce economic opportunity for the farmers in Madagascar as well as for the residents. And so that unique model netted them a Fast Company Most Innovative Company award. And then a third notable is Cosmology. They were purchased by Amazon, and Cosmology was actually started by a Juilliard student who came to NYU to get his MBA. And when his wife threatened to throw out his comic books, he found a way, quick, fast, and in a hurry, to digitize them, and Cosmology was born. So we have all types of companies that come through the program. And we've had companies that have been acquired by Twitter and Airbnb. And so it's been a quite illustrious past, and we enjoy very much doing this. Next slide, please. So I'm going to hop right in. You're thinking, what's in it for me? Well, one of the things that's in it for you is certainly the opportunity to win cash prizes in the form of investments. And I'll talk about more of that later. Those prizes take the form of prototyping grants. It also includes pro bono services and the seed capital. And I should mention that the pro bono services is not factored into the $150,000. So it's actually more, it's easily over $200,000 when you factor in the free legal accounting, marketing, AWS credit. So there's a lot that goes into the basket in order to help you launch your company. Next slide, please. The timeline runs a little like this. So we're kicking off obviously today. You'll have a couple of months to work on your application. We take about a month to review and get back to you. And then in December, the accelerator portion of the program begins. It runs 5 months, 4.5, and it concludes in April, at which point the competition portion takes over, if you will, and you will have about a month or so or 6 weeks for that portion, and we'll go a little deeper on the particulars momentarily. Next slide, please. Okay, phases, and this is how it works. Phase 1, next slide, Startup Accelerator. In order to apply to our Accelerator program, we ask that you complete a concept summary. This is a high-level document that is going to explain what it is that you're working on. Up to 3 pages. 3 pages and a couple of attachments, and that's it. We also ask you to submit a 5-minute pitch video. Now, this is optional, and what you can do in this video is provide additional context around your startup idea. And we provide some suggestions about how you might want to spend that time in your video. And it could be a variety of things, such as talking about the genesis of your idea, a little bit more about the team, explaining your customer discovery process, whatever it may be, and that's up to you. Those materials are due to us November 10th at 11:59 p.m., not midnight, not 12:01 a.m., 11:59 p.m. Next slide. The concept summary that I alluded to, that's that 3-page document, should hit 3 key themes. Who will care whether or not your venture exists? So that's your customers and your market. 2, why will they care? What is the value proposition? And what is wrong with the status quo? And what makes what you're doing so unique and irresistible? And then lastly, how do you know? Why are you so confident that you have hit upon a fabulous opportunity? And this is where you should introduce your research insights. Next slide. So essentially, after reading your concept summary, we should feel that you have a deep understanding of your industry, your market, and your customer, based not only on doing your extensive secondary research, but also your primary research. And by primary, we mean getting out there, finding your customer, finding stakeholders, suppliers, whoever's relevant for your venture idea, and talking to them. 2, we also expect to learn from this concept summary why you would be significantly better than the status quo. 3, you should have a prototype. We are looking for companies that are a little, fairly far along in the process. Now, this doesn't mean you have to have even a working prototype. It can be low fidelity. And depending upon your concept will depend upon what kind of prototype this is. So for some, it might be wireframes. It might be a landing page. For others, it may be schematic. It really depends upon what you're working on. And last, we are asking you to articulate the critical risks that you expect to encounter and how you will mitigate them. There's no such thing as a riskless startup, and we get that. What we need to know is that you know that. And so we are looking for teams that are not naive, but realistically have identified those challenges that they are likely to encounter and have sketched out some means or some strategy for overcoming those challenges. You don't have to have it all figured out. It's only 3 pages and it's still pretty early, but we need to know that you know what's ahead. Next slide. Phase 2 is the actual venture competition. This is when you're actually competing for the prize money. So phase one, the accelerator, is really focused on you working on your concept, getting advice and mentoring and coaching, workshops. Phase two is actually sort of like where the rubber meets the road, and you will be competing for the prizes that I mentioned. To do this, you will then be asked to submit a startup plan, which is about 12 pages. It's longer than the concept summary, and a 2-minute explainer video. In addition, you will be pitching your concept before a panel of judges. Whether or not it's live or not remains to be seen, but you will have an opportunity to pitch, whether virtually, probably virtually, your concept to a panel of judges who will then decide who goes on to the finals. Next slide. Okay, so there are 2 tracks, and there's just some difference between the 2. So there's new venture competition, as I mentioned, and social venture competition. For the new venture competition, next slide. Next slide. This showcases startup founders with hopefully disruptive ideas where the competitions, when they hear about you, they go, wow, we didn't see that coming. So that's the kind of idea that we're looking for. Ideally, we will help you go from concept to market through this process. That's the whole point. We're trying to get you to market. There's a prize pool of $100,000 for the new venture competition. And I say pool because occasionally the judges elect to award more than one prize from the awards money. So for example, when Pinterest won, they actually came in second, and it was split 75-25. So there's a total pool of 100,000. Sometimes they give it all to one team, sometimes not. Next is the prototyping money for concept testing. And this is important. Since we want to see proof of concept, we sprinkle a little seed money to reimburse you for any funds that you've spent to prototype or concept test. And then lastly, the prizes, once awarded, are done so as a KISS, which is very popular in startup world, and it stands for Keep It Simple Security. I'm not going to get into the details of that right at this moment. You can Google it, and we will also, of course, provide you information and copies of the agreement. But you should know that it's, for the most part, an investment that would hopefully follow an equity investment that you receive shortly after completing the competition. So that's new venture. Now here's a little something about eligibility. For the most part, all sectors are welcome, with the exception of consulting, franchises, and real estate syndications. So it's just not the kinds of companies that we're looking for. I should also say, this year, more than ever, we are looking for companies that are working on substantial issues, who will have a tremendous impact on their customers and hopefully society at large. It's not to mean social venture necessarily, but now more than ever, we think it's important that we, as a program, incent and support those who are looking to work on the gnarly issues and challenges that are being confronted by society. There are some exclusions with regards to how much money you can have made already. So if you've made $250,000 in revenue within the last 12 years, or if you have received more than $250,000 in outside financing, then this program is not quite for you. Doesn't mean that we cannot work with you as the Berkeley Center, but it just means that we're looking to help along the way someone who's a little earlier than a company that's already has $250,000 in financing. The fundraising status we're seeking, are we looking for students and teams that are seeking funding at the time they're going through the program, or expect to be within 12 months of the challenge? The team must have at least one current NYU student. So as I mentioned, it doesn't have to be a Stern student, could be any current NYU student. And by student, we mean someone who is taking a course and enrolled and expects to receive a degree or some other type of valid, certificate or whatever it is from the university, and or rather, the team needs to have a Stern alum or alumna. And then lastly, there is a nominal administrative fee of $25 per student. So if there's 4 students on your team, then we would be expecting $100 on behalf of the team. And if it's alumni or non-NYU affiliated participants, then that's $50. And non-NYU refers to those people who are working with, say, you're a student and your best friend from the neighborhood is working on your team. That would be a non-NYU affiliate. So next, social venture competition. This, as you might have guessed from the name, is to support the growing number of students and alumni interested in using their entrepreneurial skills to create innovative approaches to tackling social problems. The pool for that competition is $50,000, and again, $100,000 reimbursable for prototyping and concept testing, and also we will be awarding a KISS. So similar, very much the same. Next slide. Okay, and I'm not going to walk through all of these because they're pretty much identical to the new venture competition, but there is just one thing I do want to point out. That's that sectors are pretty much all. However, you must be a for-profit entity. So there are sometimes you may have a nonprofit that it owns or somehow controls a for-profit entity. But if you are a nonprofit, you would not be eligible for the social venture competition, because keep in mind, the prize money is largely an investment. And so there become issues with being able to invest in a nonprofit organization. Next slide. Here are just some of the partners I alluded to earlier about the pro bono services that you would receive. And these are some of the partners that we are deeply appreciative of for their generosity, and they provide free accounting, legal, AWS I mentioned, services, and this is constantly being updated, and there's actually a couple that are actually missing. So send that. Next slide. So in addition to the pro bono services, the resources that you receive kind of fall into 3 different buckets. So there's coaching and mentoring, and we have literally well over 100 coaches and mentors who are available to provide their expertise and guidance. There's the prototyping grant, which I mentioned. And then there are also boot camps and workshops on topics such as prototyping, pitching, business models, finances. So those things that you really must have ready in order for you to successfully launch your venture. Next slide. Okay, a couple of important dates. On October 5th, you'll be able to go to the portal and begin submitting your application. You can actually begin working on it and keep coming back to it. But it must be completed and submitted by November 10th. Remember, 11:59. That's the concept summary and your 5-minute video. On December 10th, we will announce the cohort for 2021. On February 24th, and we'll see how this works, but we generally hold a venture showcase where we introduce our cohort to the at-large entrepreneurial startup community here in New York City. And that includes investors, includes the campus, it includes people who are just passionate and interested in startups. It's a great event. Most of the footage from some of those videos you saw were actually from previous showcases, but we're going to be playing this by ear, of course. April 16th are the semifinals that I mentioned, and that requires a startup plan, 2-minute video, and now you'll be presenting in person to a panel of judges. Similarly, on May 14th, after the semifinals, a smaller group of companies, founders, will be invited back to the finals, and you will pitch once again about a month later. and then the winners will be announced. And that is essentially how it's going to work. Next slide. Okay, so if you haven't done so already, follow us on social media at NYU Innovation. This is how you get the latest updates and information. We also have a newsletter, so be sure if you're not receiving that to sign up for that as well. But it's at NYU Innovation. That's the easiest way to get the updates. Next slide. Okay, so that concludes part one of the program. Part two, which is our panel discussion with our two founders from past years, will be moderated by Phoebe Punzalan, our Associate Director.
Hello, everybody. All right, well, thanks to Cynthia for kind of kicking us off and sharing all the details, which are super important. Now what we're going to do is we are going to bring on Britt Martin, who's the co-founder of Food Period, and we're going to add her to the stream, as well as Eugene Joseph, there he is, who's the co-founder of Prime Discoveries. So Britt was a winner of the New Venture competition back in 2017 to 18, and Eugene was one of the winners for the New Venture competition as well the year prior in 2016 to 17. Which was actually my first year kind of doing the daily operations for the challenge. So we're super excited to have them both joining us. They were on for the 12 o'clock as well. And they'll be here just to chat with me for a little bit about their experiences going through the challenge. And then they'll stick around as well to answer questions from all of you who are viewing at home. So again, just to recap, and I can see that there are quite a few more people viewing now than we had right at 5 o'clock. So in the beginning part, Cynthia kicked us off again with, kind of the proper information session, what the Entrepreneurs Challenge is all about. Right now, we are going to do an alumni panel in just a second here with Britt and Eugene. Immediately following this, and we'll just be doing this for maybe about 20 minutes or so, we will bring Cynthia back on afterwards because I see that there are a ton of comments via the YouTube page. And so for anybody that has questions, we will also do Q&A on today's live stream as well. So we'll kind of sort through the comments, or I will rather sort through the comments. And for any questions that probably would benefit kind of the larger population, everybody viewing at home, we'll call those up on the screen and then, take a stab at answering them. And so your questions can be, logistic, related to particulars of the program itself, or they can be about the experience of participating in the Entrepreneurs Challenge, and those will be fielded by Britt and Eugene. So any questions that you may have, you can just feel free to pop them in the comments and we will do our best to answer them. And you might see as well, if you're on now, that our assistant director, Danny, is actively trying to tackle some questions as well, just so that, your curiosity can be satiated quickly. But again, for those questions, where probably more than one person has that question, we'll cover those in Q&A as well. So yeah, without further ado, I want to hop right in. So again, Britt Martin and Eugene Joseph, previous winners from cycles in the past, are joining us today. So I'm actually going to let them give their own introduction. So if you both could start with your affiliation to NYU, so which school you're from, what program you graduated from, what year, and then a brief introduction to each of your companies, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. I can kick off. My name's Britt. I'm the co-founder of Food Period, and I came to NYU for grad school. I did a program through GSAS. It was entitled Business Journalism. So half of my classes were in the journalism field, and then half were MBA classes at Stern. And I definitely got roped into the whole entrepreneur scene and got excited by what I was seeing at Stern. And so at the end of my second semester of grad school, I co-founded Food Period with actually one of my best friends from high school. So she was living in Korea at the time and working there, and I called her up with the idea, and she actually quit her job in Korea and moved to New York, showed up at my NYU dorm. And that's how we started working on Food Period. And we had like heard about the Entrepreneurs Challenge, both through Stern professors and just kind of getting integrated into the entrepreneurial community at NYU. And that's kind of how we started getting involved. And that would have been, I guess, the year 2017, where the program ended in May 2018. And Food Period, we design functional food products that support and improve women's menstrual cycles, and they're all based off of nutrition practices that are used by integrative health practitioners. But often these practices aren't in a super accessible form. They are sometimes hard to follow, confusing, because you have to often source different foods. And we just simplify that through our products. We have an energy bite called Moon Bites, and there's a whole process you follow. Take different bites on different days, depending on where you're at in your cycle. And then we also have our Moon Seeds, which we brought out during the pandemic, which is a more affordable version of the practice. And yeah, this practice can help women improve their hormonal acne, PMS, irregular cycles, cramps, mood swings, all sorts of stuff. And yeah, it's been a really exciting journey. And I know we definitely would not be where we were today without this Entrepreneurs Challenge. So it was a really great framework to get from an idea to an actual revenue generating business.
Hi, my name is Eugene Joseph. I'm the founder and CEO of Prime Discoveries. We're a microbe testing company based in New York. In terms of my background, I went to New York University's Stern School of Business. Prior to that, I studied engineering for about a year or two, and then I transferred into Stern. And then maybe for some context, I sort of did the traditional, when I was an undergrad, an internship in consulting, banking, trading. Didn't really find my ideal fit. And then I joined an early stage venture firm, and really, I looked for an area where I thought there was going to be tremendous growth. So ended up hyper-focusing on genomics, and ended up joining a genomics company that was acquired a few years later, post joining for quite a lot of money, and was really thinking about what is next. And I saw that where I could really leverage my skills, right, in terms of building out massively scalable infrastructure for supporting genetic testing, right? And I saw like the next big area was going to be microbe testing, or being able to run microbe panels at the scale of like millions of tests. And so, while I was really hyper-focused on that mission, like how can you create something that's actionable if you're taking a microbe or microbiome sample and it's actually useful for an individual. And so, really after really I had that idea for about a year or two, ended up applying to the business plan competition. It's like incredibly valuable. We were focused on sort of a consumer microbiome test, and that we ended up pivoting a little bit, and that ended up becoming Prime Discoveries, where we're really focused on rapid microbe or microbiome panels, with a specific focus on SARS-CoV-2. So really the pandemic allowed us to really just hyper-focus on sort of these massively scalable panels for like COVID and the flu. And so, yeah, that's really what we're focused on now.
Well, thanks so much for the intro. And I love that both of you, have been able to really be agile in these times, and have been kind of quick enough to pivot your businesses or adapt them a little bit. In your case, quite a lot, Eugene. To really be able to speak to what's going on currently. I think that's a really important trait for entrepreneurs, to not be kind of set on one specific path, and to learn to be flexible rather than always kind of imposing what you feel like should be done. We talked a lot about this on the 12 o'clock session as well, kind of being open to what life may bring to your venture. But it's great to hear kind of where you started. And actually, before we move on, Eugene shared a little bit of the origin story of Prime Discoveries, and back when it was still called Know You.
Right.
Yeah, but I think, Britt, you have a really interesting origin story, and I've heard it a couple of times. Do you mind giving us 30 seconds on kind of the genesis of Food Period?
Yeah, of course. So actually it started with my own personal health issue at 25, just out of the blue. I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a type of blood cancer. And I started chemo right away, 19 days after I had found a lump in my neck. And during that process, I stopped getting my period. And everything had kind of happened so quickly. And I was like, oh my gosh, my period's gone now too. And I went to my oncologist and I asked, like, what can I do? And he said, don't even worry about it. We're just going to put you on the pill, like, once we're finished treatment. And I kind of looked at him, my jaw dropped, and I'm thinking, like, the pill? Like, you want to put more synthetic hormones, more chemicals into my body after this 6-month process? And he genuinely said to me, we just don't have many other options for women's health issues like this. And I think that, like, set something off in my brain. And I think the whole experience up until that part had felt like really out of my control. And I just realized that this was maybe something that I could solve on my own or have some sort of control over. So I visited dozens of integrative health practitioners, like functional doctors, acupuncturists, naturopaths, nutritionists. I was just grasping at anyone who was doing anything other than, like, the birth control pill for period challenges. And I kept hearing about this practice called seed syncing. It's often called seed cycling as well. And I thought, like, oh, this is pretty, like, easy. You just eat this specific combination of seeds depending on which phase of the menstrual cycle you're in. And I practiced it religiously for 3 months, which is the minimum you should practice seed syncing. And my period came back, and it didn't only come back, but I had terrible periods growing up. And this period was great. Like, I would literally use the word great to describe it. And I'm like, is this possible? Like, what's happening? And I kept using the practice, and, like, my period, honestly, for the last 3.5 years, I've had a great period. It's been so enjoyable. And so that was kind of the impetus to start Food Period, just because I was sourcing these seeds from multiple different, like, natural health grocers, and it would take me a lot of time every month to source them and then, like, make them into energy bites or however I wanted to eat them. And I was actually looking to find if somebody was making these that I could buy them from them, because I just didn't want to spend the time doing it myself. And no one was. And that was kind of the genesis of the idea. And it was great because I had spoken with so many practitioners. I realized it was quite well known in the natural health space. And a lot of these practitioners had their clients struggle with compliance with the practice just because of the complicated nature of it. And so they were excited to refer patients and clients to us once we started, because it just made it easier for them and their clients to follow the practice and see the benefits. So it was a really great, like, organic, like, mutual tool that helped both sides.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I love that origin story because, number one, it makes you thankful to be living in 2020, where we can talk really openly about these things. Not that everything has gone well in 2020, but, you know, a small glimmer. And then also, I think it's a great example of you know, finding a gap in the marketplace and really capitalizing on it. But yeah, so, you know, we know now kind of, you know, where you've come from in the past, or what started it all for you. But I think everyone probably wants to know what you're up to now. So I know that each of you has come really quite a long way since your time in the challenge. And for each of you, you know, those paths look completely different just because your ventures are different. But tell us a little bit more about what some of those milestones have been, and, you know, where the company is now vis-a-vis where it was before.
Yeah, sure. So on our side, I mean, post the competition, we ended up raising well over $3 million, and now really we're going out and raising another larger financing as well too. So you learn a lot about what's involved, you know, in raising a venture round, and also, you know, the certain types of milestones that you need to hit. Really on our side, we spent year 1, year 2 really focused on building out our platform, because ultimately we are a platform company that can spin up microbe tests regardless of the indication. So we have been able to develop diagnostics for, let's say, for being able to identify colorectal cancer or IBD just using a sample, which is like very unique and novel in the sense being able to just go from sample to disease. Around the time of I'd say like around December, January, we really started paying attention to what was going on with COVID, and we just started to hyper focus on on building out a panel, right? And something that was rapid. So in the sense being able to do it in less than 30 minutes using saliva, and being able to sort of run it at with automation within a laboratory. So being able to process like millions of samples, and we were able to do that. So given now that we have been able to do that, now we are basically like we're in a few different competitions. We're in X Prize. We recently got like a semifinalists. We're working actually with New York University on an external validation, all with the goal of like getting an emergency authorization by the FDA. And all these different things require capital as well too. So it kind of comes around in a circle, right? And so I think for I would say it's where we are now compared to a few years ago. We have a bigger team. You know, we have a lot of commitments in terms of like external stakeholders, like the investors that we have on our cap table, to employees that we need to take care of, to suppliers, to customers, in this case being labs, right? So it's been a very interesting journey, especially finding out our technology had a strong use case given the pandemic. But I think I wouldn't really trade it for anything.
Yeah, and for us, so when we were part of the Entrepreneurs Challenge, we were hand rolling our Moon Bites, which are our energy bite product, in a commercial kitchen in Brooklyn. So we do the programming by day, and like work on the business side of things. And then around like 4 p.m., we'd head out to Brooklyn with like all of our ingredients in hand, and we'd roll energy bites until 4 a.m. It was a really exhausting few months. But it was great because you got really close to the product. You understood what worked and what didn't work. But still, I do not miss it. And so since then, and this is one thing that the capital from the Entrepreneurs Challenge really helped us with, is scaling to working with the co-packers. So we now work with the manufacturer in North Carolina, and they make all of our products for us. And so that's probably like the biggest shift in just being able to dedicate more time and energy to like strategy and like what are we going to do now to like improve customer retention, and like how do we go after new customers that's not like an organic nature, which was the original way that we grew in the beginning. And so that's probably like the biggest shift for us since the competition. And then also at the start of the pandemic, we have stayed really close with our customers. We talk to them every single day. We're like, that's something that we definitely learned through the Entrepreneurs Challenge, the customer discovery element, and always using them for feedback, making sure you're solving their problems. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, we had heard from quite a few, we love your product. It's helped our period so much, but we just can't afford it. And so my co-founder and I quickly got to work on like coming up with a more affordable solution. So we now offer Moon seeds, which allow you to follow the exact same practice, but they're more versatile. You can make your own energy bites. We provide you with recipes. If you're somebody that likes to be in the kitchen, it's a great alternative. And so launching a new product in a pandemic was a fun learning experience as well. And I think that definitely the agility that we had to learn, like to be part of the Entrepreneurs Challenge in the beginning, and then since, it's really served us well. And it sounds like it served Eugene super well too since.
Yeah. So, you guys have come a pretty long way, but when you were deciding to whether or not to join the challenge, I mean, Britt, you were in school, you were a grad student, Eugene, you had a full-time job. What made you say, I would really love to join a program where I have to do all of this extra work on top of an already busy schedule. There had to obviously be a really good reason. So what was in it for you? What were you hoping to get out of it?
On my side, the person who really convinced me was Ben Silverman, because I was at startup school in San Francisco. It was like run by Y Combinator, and he just kind of came up on stage and basically said, keep in mind, like Pinterest is at this point was like fairly large. And he just kind of said, we got our start at a business plan competition with New York University, right? And I'm just sitting, in this random part of San Francisco, and I remember looking at my phone, and then I see that the business plan competition submission application deadline was extended by another week. I had just missed the deadline, so I was like, all right, why not? I think it's a sign from the universe. Let me apply, right? So that's one thing I would say, which was interesting. But the second thing was more, I had joined because I really wanted to work closely and start a company with my co-founder, right? My objective really was to just build a massively scalable company, and not like a project, right? And so in that world, I wanted to spend like about a year, go through sort of like the initial beginnings or the stressful part of like trying to go through ideation and go through all the pieces that are involved in terms of building a company, and just kind of see, do we survive at the end of it all, right? Or do we have like a really great relationship afterwards? And things ended up working out like quite well. And not only that, but there was also a lot of really great customer validation that we got at the end of participation of that, in terms of our technology and the use case for actual customers. Like people actually wanted to buy our product, right? Which is, again, something that I think everybody should strive for on day one. We were talking about this, I think, in the earlier session, but again, I don't see really any reason why anybody here, anybody that's participating in this program couldn't generate like, let's say, a few $100K in revenue by the time that the program is over, right? All the tools are available to let you do that.
Yeah, and for us, so my co-founder had moved from Korea in the summer before my second year of my master's program started. And we had thought about maybe waiting until I was done school, but we're like, why wait? Like, we want to do this. Let's just move on it. And we're so happy that we did, because we ended up being involved in all these NYU programs that helped us so much. And I think we had in the beginning really been looking for an accelerator type program. So in addition to doing the Entrepreneurs Challenge, we had applied to a bunch of different accelerators. And actually, I think it was in February or March, like halfway into the Entrepreneurs program, we actually got accepted to a pretty well-known food accelerator. And we actually turned it down because we felt like we were getting everything that we needed in terms of programming, mentors, like introductions to people that we needed to know, the legal support, all of that, like preparation for fundraising, all of those things through the Entrepreneurs Challenge. And so I think for us, it was really just like having this framework to build a business when it was both of our first time doing that. And then I think we were also excited about the potential of, winning this challenge, and we're very competitive. So we get so excited about like trying to, do our best in all of these different competitions. And so it adds like some sort of like milestones or markers or goals to your early like company development, which I think was helpful for us.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's do a fill in the blank question. So I think we'll do maybe just one or two more questions, and then we'll move into Q&A. So all of these people with really great questions can have a chunk of your time as well. All right, so before joining the Entrepreneurs Challenge, I wish somebody had told me X.
I can start. Hire a designer for your PowerPoint slides. Go on.
Yeah, I'll definitely say that's a good one, because my co-founder is a graphic designer, and I think it's the best skill. I'd say talk to your customers. Like, And I mean, we started the Entrepreneurs Challenge pretty quickly after starting, but we could have saved ourselves a couple months like strategizing by just asking customers what they thought.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And just FYI, we do, we have heard that feedback quite a bit, Eugene. So thanks. That's actually a really good tip. But we have heard that a lot, people needing, help with their slides directly, not just kind of presentation skills more broadly. So we do actually offer some help in that area as well. And yes, Britt, definitely echoing the kind of need for customer discovery. I think we'll probably say that till we're blue in the face every year, but I don't think we can say it too much. So we'll just keep on saying it. Okay, so I do want to kind of roll into Q&A soon, but I have a couple, last really, really important questions for you both. The first of which is, are you a team Netflix or are you Hulu or are you screen free? And depending on what you are, what are you watching right now?
Oh, this is a tough one. Okay, I'm team Netflix because I'm in Canada at the moment, so we don't get Hulu. And actually, I just watched the Harry Potter films again. Like, it was amazing. I watched like half a movie every night for the past 2 weeks, and it really brought me back to my childhood.
And I'm team Amazon Video. That wasn't an option, but I watch like The Boys on that.
Yeah, and actually I've been doing a lot of Disney Plus recently, watching Hamilton over and over and over again. I don't know if anybody out there has been doing that, but I'll cop to it. Okay, so yeah, let's do Q&A now, and I'm gonna bring Cynthia back on, and I'm gonna take myself off of the stream just very briefly because I need to fix my lighting. It's getting a little dark in here, but let me first bring Cynthia back on. Okay. Okay, good. You're unmuted. And then let's find a good question to start us off. So hang tight because there are actually so many questions on here that a little bit of. Okay. All right. Here's one. So what are the key differences between 300K challenge and social impact for 2020? Is this maybe asking what are the differences between new venture competition?
Yeah, I think what I was saying is that it's not a requirement for the new venture competition, but it's if all things are created equal and you have someone who is working on a big issue, like the two that we have here represented by the founders here, something of some import versus, and I don't want to disparage any ideas, but versus an issue that is not, then all things being equal, that idea that is going to have more impact will probably do a lot better in particularly in light of this very turbulent, tumultuous time that we're living in. The social impact competition is for those ventures that are looking to solve some social impact, double bottom line in terms of, it may be the environment, it may be literacy, it could be any number of things. So it's not to be confused, but the new venture competition does not require that you do so. But I'm just suggesting that because of the climate that we're in, those companies that are likely to have an impact on society writ large would probably stand a better chance.
Okay, here's another one. This is also kind of a programmatic question. Can non-Stern and non-business grad students join the competition?
Current students are absolutely welcome. So it doesn't matter. Tandon is usually second and CAS is usually third. We get strong representation from Shanghai, Abu Dhabi. So if you're a current student, you are welcome, whether grad or undergrad. And I just wanted to, I realized that just before you flipped the slide there, the other question that they asked was whether or not they can apply to both. If you're not sure, you can apply to one or the other. And we, during the evaluation process during that month between submission and when we announced the cohort, there is some discussion about where a team would be a best fit. And we'll contact you and we'll say, listen, we think this is more a new venture, or we think you'll be more competitive in social, and we'll let you know. So you can submit if you want to flag us and say, I applied to social, but I think I might be better for new venture. Let me know. You can do that as well. So I just realized that one.
Yes, so we do kind of help you in that regard. One caveat is that, I've seen this a number of times, I will warn against kind of trying to game the system, if you will. So I have definitely seen teams who have, tried to apply for the social venture track because they know it's a smaller track. They feel will be a little bit more competitive because there's kind of, there's less people to go up against. But obviously, one of the things that we are evaluating for the social venture track is, your social impact itself. What kind of social impact will the business have? So if you are really a better fit for new venture competition and you sort of know that, but you try to apply for social venture, sometimes it can backfire because then the application just doesn't seem very strong. So, do have a conversation with us. Yes, if you're kind of on the fence, and you could go either way, we do help there. But yes, don't try to game the system. I definitely have had a couple of conversations with teams in the past who have pretty much come right out and said, well, I just want to apply for the track where there's the fewest teams. Don't do that.
I'm sorry, not to monopolize, but I just want to get back to that question as well. So Food Period competed in the new venture competition. But if you were listening, she was solving a very meaningful problem. And so that's what I mean. So it's not a social venture, but the fact that she exists, that it is of great importance to her customer. And that's what I mean. We once had someone mention, and I hope no one out there listening has a dating app, but someone had mentioned a dating app for the disabled. So that solves a very interesting and important issue for that customer segment. So not social, well, not in the way we mean, it is social, but it's not a social venture, but it does solve an important problem. So that's what I mean. And I would say to anyone that in true entrepreneurial fashion, apply. Do not take yourself out of the competition before you even enter. If you have any doubts at all, just apply.
Okay. Here's another eligibility question, and I saw a couple of questions for Britt and Jen as well. I'm Britt and Jen. I miss Jen. Britt and Eugene. But let's get through some of the kind of eligibility stuff.
If you raise more than $250,000, what we're talking about is entering the competition, having already done so. So this is a change over previous years. And in light of the fact that we are asking for you to be further along, then it's likely that we're to have more companies that will have raised as much by the time they get to the end. So that does not preclude you from crossing the finish line if you do.
Okay, so there's a question that I wanted to post, and because there are so many comments, I actually cannot find it. But somebody had asked about kind of a comparison between the challenge and Y Combinator, why apply to the challenge versus that or vice versa. I will say that they're both very strong programs, but I think I actually want to throw this. This is the question that I had in mind for Britt and Eugene was talking about Y Combinator a little bit. But I think it might kind of come back to what are the benefits of just being in the challenge. And I know that we touched on it a little bit, but if there are things that you kind of didn't mention, earlier that you want to elaborate on, that might be helpful kind of towards answering this question.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the big thing is NYU, right? Like you're tapping there's somebody from your team that's probably like an NYU alum or a current NYU student, and you really get to tap into the whole network, right? That is probably like the biggest thing. And also the, Y Combinator is hands off, right? And the focus is really just I'm familiar with YC. Like it's not like they really hold your hand, right? And the objective really is 3 months, right? Raise a lot of capital, right? Whereas here, I think there's a lot of effort that's being put by like people like, let's say, Phoebe and Cynthia, right, in terms of organizing a program that's specifically for NYU students, and you get like access to so many mentors that are just willing to help you just simply through the NYU connection, right? Whereas you're not necessarily going to find that through YC.
Yeah, and I'd add to that too, that as you get further along in the program, the group of startups is like smaller and smaller. And so in that sense, like you're really highlighted on your success throughout the program. So then when it comes to the finals and you're pitching, there's often a lot of VCs there as well. And you're one of 5 if for the new venture competition, at least that's how it was in my year. And so it really like highlights you. So you're not one of like 40 or 50 companies maybe pitching over a 2 to 3 day period, which could be beneficial in other ways. But I think, I would agree that the caliber of coaches and their willingness to be hands-on for free, I would say just by being part of the NYU network, and then also just that you're being highlighted as you move along further in the process because it gets smaller and smaller.
Okay, so here's a question. This is actually kind of the response, but David had asked a question about KISS. And so without going into too much detail, and Cynthia, maybe you just want to elaborate very briefly, I think the question was how much equity, and the short version is it depends, but maybe you want to provide just a little bit more detail.
Essentially, so in the past, the prize money has been done as a grant with no strings attached. So Prime Discoveries and Food Period were beneficiaries of that program. Last year, we changed the model so that it's actually contingent upon you raising a round. And then the money will be converted into equity based on how much you raise. And so that's the depends part.
Okay. All right, here's a quick one. Does the business need to be US based? And Danny answered this one for everybody in the comments. But the quick answer is no. We've definitely had plenty of teams who, have operated out of other countries, especially not only, but especially in the social impact track, solving kind of problems abroad. Let's see. Okay, here's another one. Similar question. Can you apply to both new venture and social venture with one startup idea? You will have to pick one. Again, we can kind of help you decide.
Actually, interestingly, I'd love to add in the beginning, I think at this event back in 2017, I think Jen, my co-founder, and we ran up to Phoebe and we were trying to understand if we should apply new venture or social, and we really weren't sure. And Phoebe, I still remember you asked us a question like, is the social mission inherent to your business in a way that you would measure it? Like, do you have a KPI to measure that social impact? And although like we were kind of theoretizing about how we could measure it, it wasn't naturally inherent. And I thought that was just like a really good way to think about whether you apply new venture or social. If like your main key KPI is related to social impact, then like probably that route. And if it's not, probably new venture. And then I know the team at NYU Innovation looked at our application too, to just make sure that we were in the right track.
And definitely measurement is going to be important if you are in this track. So you can't simply say, we do a lot of good. It's like, how much good? Tell us, tell us in numbers, please quantify it. So yeah, that's a really good thing to note as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can non-Stern and non-business grad students join the competition? I can't remember if this is a question that I posted previously or if it's one that I was just looking at and I didn't actually do it.
We did this one.
Okay, so yes, all current students. Okay. Here's one. Do businesses have to be legally registered to participate?
No. You will need to be a legal entity in order to receive the prize, but no, you do not.
All right, here's another good one. Is there a way to connect with NYU students interested in joining a startup with no current NYU students on board?
Is there a way to connect with NYU students that are interested in joining a startup with? Oh, okay, got it. Yes. So I believe there is a teammate hunt tomorrow that's being done by the Leslie E Lab. And I'm trying to think the easiest way to find out about that. I guess we can send something out with the link. We also have a teammate hunt that will be coming up in a few weeks. We also provide other opportunities through the Startup Hub. We also have a spreadsheet that you can sign up and put sort of like needs and wants on that. So there are a couple of different ways that we can go about it. So the short answer is yes.
Yeah. So Britt, you and Jen have just been friends for a very long time, so we know how you guys met. Eugene, I can't remember. You and Arun didn't meet through a teammate hunt, did you? You guys had known each other before?
No, we didn't. Yeah, we didn't meet through teammate hunt. We knew each other for about like 3 years prior, and then we decided to participate in the program.
But I know a lot of friends whose startups were founded through teammate hunt, or like events and things like that at NYU. So I actually have heard that they've been really valuable, and everyone going is pretty keen to actually be involved and not just like going to see. So I think it's a good opportunity.
We actually, from, now I'm blanking on which year, but we had a previous finalist in the competition. They were previously Suneris and now they're Cressalon, or it's vice versa. I always get it mixed up. But those of you might have seen them. I always find that they're on like a random BuzzFeed video titled something along the lines of like really cool inventions, something like that. And so they've developed this gel that basically stops bleeding on contact. And the two founders met through a teammate hunt. So when they're kind of in your seats, Britt and Eugene, we always have them kind of share that story. Here's another good one. What are the main points that the businesses are judged on? Is it progress? Is it the idea? Is it people? It's pretty much all, but I'll let Cynthia kind of explain the criteria a little bit more.
I would say in progress, people, all three. It's really hard to separate them. We actually do have guidelines that very clearly spell out how you will be evaluated. But I will tell you at this stage, it's about validating as best you can your idea. And that means getting out there and doing your primary research, which is essentially your customer discovery. We want to know that you have talked to people and you have learned and you have gained insights into the situation or the problem or the need that you have identified, and that your solution is based not just on what you would like to introduce to the market, but what the market would likely be ready to receive. And there's just no faking that. There's no substitute for that. So that's going to be very critical at this juncture.
Yeah, and on the earlier session, the 12 o'clock session, Britt said something like, looking back, I'm really embarrassed of the first products that we had. But I think that's great. I mean, and then I was also joking that we had no problem with it because it was a food product. So we were always like, oh, what you got for us? Every time we saw them. Have you pivoted? Do we need to test the pivot perhaps?
Yeah. You guys are very generous taste testers. And we'd like walk around with little sheets that we'd like get people to give us their anonymous feedback on.
Yeah,
and so,
exactly.
I think like, I definitely add that like after you've completed your primary research, like trying to come out with an MVP, a minimum viable product, your prototype. Obviously, some businesses are easier to do that for than others. But as long as you can get a prototype up and running, then you have customer data or customer interaction and like things that you can add to it. And so I think that went a long way in terms with the judges, for us at least, that we were out in the market, we had paying customers, we were coming out with new flavors and changes to our form factor every month based on all of that feedback. So I think that's really compelling.
Yeah, and again, hitting on things that have already been said. In Britt's case, she had a physical product, but sometimes it's not always easy to have what feels like a prototype. And so, Eugene, you were mentioning that you had somewhat like a lo-fi or medium-fi prototype. If you want to kind of talk about what you had.
Yeah, I mean, so my perception on this is like, no matter how complicated your technology is, you can always like describe, what you're doing, and you can always create sort of like a lo-fi prototype or something like that you could potentially get a letter of intent to purchase or something like that within a period of 7 to 8 months, right? I mean, to give you a good example, I think there's that high-speed plane company, I think it's called like Boomsonic or Hypersonic or something like that. They got like a letter of intent to purchase planes, I think like 6 months out of Y Combinator from like Richard Branson's company, right? That's like the most complicated like tech you could imagine, right? And they got that, right? So I think obviously that's an extreme, but I would say there's no excuse, right? I think you have to be creative, you have to figure it out, and that's really part of business, right? I think to do that.
All right, here's one that's kind of a hybrid question for both sides. Do you recommend we mature our ideas first and reapply next year? It's very similar to what was already asked. I think it's just kind of a different version. I see Cynthia shaking her head no, and
jump in. Because the process of applying this year, two things will happen. Either you'll be accepted, and yay, or you'll be that much further along in knowing how to articulate your vision on what you need to do to move it forward, and you really have nothing to lose. So I wouldn't wait around for a year. Oftentimes, people think they're not ready and they actually are a little bit further along than they think, or the process will help you get there. So we're not necessarily looking for everything to be fully baked. That's why it's done in these two stages. And so don't take yourself out of it. It's like, what does the lotto say? A lottery? It's like you got to be in it to win it. So be in it. And either way, you actually do win, because either you learn or you're accepted.
And I'd also add to that I think that in order to mature your ideas, you actually need to take the steps that are required for the challenge. Like if you're not doing those things already in the next year, I don't think you'll be in a better position to join then. So I'd say that like if you're really committed to your idea, jumping into the challenge and then really investing and taking those steps, like seeing the progress from start to finish is also a huge thing for judges to see what you can get done in 7 or 8 months. So I'd say definitely join, don't wait.
Yeah, the challenge definitely can give you a lot of structure. It's very similar to, an analogy I use is like an SAT class. It's not that you don't know, how to add, but it gives you, it pushes you to do the things that you should be doing. Although in this case, it's a little bit different because there are probably startup skills that you don't know. So on top of giving you structure, there is also know-how that the challenge is providing as well. Okay, so this question is, thanks for asking this, by the way. Can international students on an F1 visa participate without using CTP or OTP? I don't know exactly what CTP or OTP are, but I do want to highlight participation from international students with visas. So we definitely welcome everybody to participate, and certainly NYU has a wealth of international students. One thing I will say is that our office is, just as a, get it out there, our office is not really equipped to handle visa issues. So we have gotten that request more and more each year. So you will have to work with, I think it's like the Office of Global, I'm not getting it quite right.
OGS?
OGS, yes. I don't remember what the S services. OGS is who you'll want to work with. But yes, from our standpoint, we do not bar international students from participating. But if you need to work out any visa issues, that would be outside of the realm of what we're able to do.
And actually, I was on an F1 when I was in the program. So I was on an F1, and then I started my OPT before the program was finished. And I don't think that was necessarily required, but as my graduation date was a little bit sooner, I didn't want to miss the chance to apply for my OPT. So that's why. But definitely F1 is fine. And then just talk to OGS about the CPT or OPT, OPT before converting, but it shouldn't be a problem.
Great. How fortuitous that we have you on here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I don't have a co-founder. Can I apply? So from Cynthia's end and my end, yes, definitely you can. I think I see Danny's response saying you don't, but it's always good to have a co-founder just because of the sheer volume of work. It's good to have another perspective so that you don't have kind of tunnel vision. I mean, it's a lot that you have to do. For Britt and Eugene, again, kind of it's an experiential question as well. Maybe talking a little bit about what it's like to have a co-founder, in what ways has that helped you? We had a question earlier that's very similar. That was sort of like, what is the sweet spot? How many team members? The short version was it's kind of different. Both of you have one other co-founder, and that's worked for you. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, on my side, one thing, I think it's good to have a co-founder because they can keep you a co-founder that is execution focused and driven as well too. So if you're having a bad day or whatever, they can sort of push it along, right? And sort of vice versa, right? And also, I would say having complementary skill sets. In my case, my co-founder's skills are in computational biology and technology and science, right? Whereas mine is sort of product management, project management, business, finance, fundraising, right? So it's complementary in that case. I sort of, just in my perspective, because I had sort of a founding team a long time ago where it was 5 people, I felt it was very hard to sort of build a business in that case because you're always focused on consensus, building and consensus-driven things. Whereas, especially if you have 5 co-founders, I think sort of the sweet spot, again, in my personal opinion, is usually 2 to 3, and just making sure that each person has their own things, and that's defined early on. Otherwise, you can always have co-founders and people who are part-time employees, right? That may be potentially better. It just gets sensitive again when it comes to equity split discussions, things like that.
Yeah, I'd agree. We're 2 as well, my co-founder and I think that having a smaller co-founder team allows us to be a bit more agile with how quickly we make changes and things like that. And even at times there are challenges with getting 2 people to agree on the right path forward. So I think that 2 is the sweet spot, at least in my experience. And I think that kind of exactly how Eugene mentioned, you can hire people, you can give them part of an equity stock pool. And so it doesn't mean that they have to be working for free without any ownership, but they don't need to be a co-founder level with you. So, yeah.
Okay, and I think we'll do last question and probably be able to end a couple minutes early. All right. What are the pro bono services that are offered? A lot.
So, for example, and it depends, but there's $10,000 worth of legal, accounting services. There are AWS credits. No, we don't offer developers. I wish we could. No, we don't do that. But it easily, the total pool, if you will, the package pool, just from the legal and accounting services in AWS alone is about $30,000.
I'm not sure what it means, access to prior. I mean, we don't sell out the prior winners for rent or anything like that. But I mean, maybe we should. But we have some of them here. You know, if you are looking just for perspective, you can always, be in touch, and we can link up somebody. Here's one truly last question. If we've already started a company but are looking to start a new venture, can we still apply? You can be a previous founder as long as the company, still meets,
the criteria.
Yes.
Yeah, but absolutely, Benjamin. We like serial entrepreneurs, and actually a couple of years ago we had a winner who had started a company prior, so that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Any kind of closing thoughts from anyone before we kind of put on the closing slideshow here?
I guess I would add just that it's such a unique opportunity to be in the NYU ecosystem. And I mean, I was a student, but Eugene was an alumnus. And so I think that there's just so many great opportunities as part of this program. So really take advantage of every one. I think we signed up to every possible thing that was going on. And we learned so much. I think we learned more in that first 7 to 8 months than we have even since, and we learn a lot. So every day. So that's saying something. So just definitely take advantage of the opportunity, and you won't be sorry that you did. And no matter if you win or you don't, you'll be better off for it.
Agreed. So, as a final thing, just thank you to everybody who's viewing from home. We had great engagement, so we're, really happy about that. We were saying again on the 12 p.m. that usually when we hold this event, we are sitting in Paulson Auditorium, which is the giant auditorium in the lower level of the Stern building. We're typically a fire hazard, not that we should publicize that by any means, but 500 people. So we're very much used to this being a really vibrant, kind of noisy event where we can interact with everybody in person. Obviously, that's not a good idea right now for obvious reasons. But we do miss that kind of energy. So it was nice to see, everybody really actively engaged in the comments, asking, good questions, kind of expressing your enthusiasm for participating this year. So that's really nice. And then, of course, thank you so much to Britt and Eugene for kind of sharing all your thoughts and taking time out of your day. These people they were busy before, and they're even busier now, as you can see, with all of the things that they're doing. So we're really grateful to have you on for this is the second time now today. So
yeah, thanks for having us.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks again. We'll give you a little closing photo slideshow, and this will, after the broadcast ends, you can come back to this link if you want to view it again. All right, so everybody have a great rest of your evening, Friday, and weekend.
Bye.